are going live. I'm checking my audio. Give me a second. Check, 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 check. Something seems to be wrong with my audio. Can you say something right quick?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
good. It looks like the audio levels are good. So I'm going to. Now it's us live on the screen. What's up, folks? Got a very special guest today. I was on the bus to and from Albany going to take care of the Rob Brooks situation. I met this gentleman right here, and he's going to say what's up. So we're going to actually go ahead. You can introduce yourself.
Okay. Landani Kezilar Faisani. I said that I'm Kezilar, and what's up? I'm involved in activism at this point. I'm an individual who has just been released less than 2 years ago from unlawful conviction, in which I did 30 years. Um, and now I'm out along with many other people that are involved in the criminal justice reform. I'm a civil rights union activist and member, uh, one of the emerging leaders there for Vocal New York, which is the umbrella organization that has four separate unions involved, from the AIDS, homelessness, criminal justice reform, and something else. I forgot what the other one was, but nevertheless, that's what I am. But beyond that, um, I've done something that's like absolutely incredible, um, and a worthy effort that I believe is going to have a great impact on the social fabric of the globe. So, uh, just I'm glad to be here. And if anyone is interested in what I have to say, later on you can contact me and see what we can do in terms of disseminating what it is that I have to offer. Um, so you can ask the questions,
All right, great.
and I'm.
So usually I start off these. I'm going to engage you in something called the online activist interview series, where most of the questions are the same. So the
Mhm.
first question I ask is, what got you started with the whole activist thing? Was it like just coming out of? You said you were locked up. Were you activist before you were locked up? While you were locked up, you started studying civil rights texts. Got involved with that. I know you said you were wrongfully incarcerated. That probably sparked a lot of investigation on your own part into civil rights. What kind of started your whole journey off as an activist?
Well, first of all, primarily I'm involved with the criminal justice reform movement that's out there. We have different organizations like RAP and parole prep organizations, and different groups who are dealing with many of the marginalizations that happen inside prisons, the abuse, brutal beatings, and so forth, such as with Robert Brooks. And I have to say that I am a Robert Brooks, except with the exception is that I wasn't killed. And so in the 30 years that I served, wrongfully convicted, 15 of those years was in solitary confinement or SHU or the box. Different people understand it. And so in those 15 years, um, in order to survive that, there has to be a lot of reading done. There has to be a lot of discussions with other individuals who are, you know, uh, in those tombs that they have us in. And so I honed my mind, I honed my consciousness. I understood what's going on in the world, the struggles that's going on, and you have to be an activist once you raise your consciousness and understand what's going on, and you realize that these things are systemic. Most people, when they hear the term systemic, they really don't understand what that actually means. But what it really actually means is that an entity has grown so big that it is now autonomous, where it actually perpetuates itself, right? And so when you're saying systemic, you're not even really talking about, like, using correction officers as an example. You're not really talking about the correction officers themselves. They're just filling holes and spots. If someone were to die as a correction officer, there'll be another one to take his place or her place and become a correction officer. And so we don't actually want to deal with them um, directly necessarily for this movement. We actually want to deal with the system that has been allowed to perpetuate and to grow and to self perpetuate. And so that is what I aim to do. This is what I'm doing. And there are many men like me who has been incarcerated for 20, 30, 40 years, and we're all out now. So if you see in the Robert Brooks case, you see Mr. Hamilton and many others who are out there, Rev Kev and so forth. Um, you and I know the names Rennie and so on. John Draper from Vocal New York. Um, Ted Burrows, Ted Funding. That's my brother there. We also have, we have people who are out now who served so much time, and now we were the ones who were on the forefront of not just the political aspect but the legal aspect of attacking many of the you know uh, things that go on the inside. And so now we're on the outside, and we're making waves. We're getting together. We're all creating our own separate entities, and then bringing them together. And so, as you can see from the Robert Brooks movement, it is also something that is self-perpetuating and it's growing. And we just want to put a light on that and many other things that are going on.
Okay. We'll be returning to the Robert Brooks situation at the end of this conversation, but I do want to keep all the questions the same. But there's a very deep answer. I really did appreciate that, and I really respect, a lot of the time that you had alone to think about these things. I know really kind of like pushed you to really develop these thoughts to a deep level. So I'm really honored to be here. Anyways, let's go on to the next question. The
Yeah.
thing is that some people who are activists, they say they have a different type of ideology. Some people say they're socialists. Some people have this dichotomy, socialist capitalists. They also have this other thing which they call conservatives. That doesn't always fit in that dichotomy. There's a lot of different labels people might call themselves. If you have a political idea, do you have a political ideology? And if you do have one, does it have a name? Maybe you follow a couple ideologies. What's your
Well, that's a tough question. Uh, because I have studied many of the different ideologies, from dialectical materialism, to almost anything you could possibly think of concerning these, political philosophies, and from socialism, communism, and so forth. And you know, uh, according to the scholars, the world is eventually going to end up being socialist anyway, and or all the way to the end of that. The extreme would be communism, but I'm none of those and all of those, and everything in between. Because when you see all of these ideologies and these philosophies and these political positions on paper, they're all beautiful, but in its application for the states that apply them, um, that doesn't turn out to be nice. What happens is just a new machine that perpetuates the same inequalities and marginalization of its people. And so now the reason why I say that that's something that is heavy on my mind is because of what you already know concerning the creation of the new national identity of those who were formerly called African American, Afro Cuban, African, and Afro this, that, and the other. We are now what you call Carubia, which means the global nation. And for the first time, and this is the first time that is actually publicly being spoken of on a radio station or for a YouTube station. And so, for the first time, this is the first time that a nation has been born globally without there having to be some sort of domination, or colonization or taking over, some war happening. This happened through um, my what we call a frolele, or an epiphany, that I had when I was in solitary confinement, in which I created the identity along with an entire language for the people. Um, Initially, when I created the language, it was for black people initially, but I understood after having discussions with many of my colleagues that that's not the direction. This is something that has to be um, universal and touches all of humanity, because this is a, the number one form, of social interaction is verbal communication. And so, and this language is so special, which I'm sure we'll get into later, but I know you want to ask me, your line of questioning. So we'll get back to that. I'm just throwing out little tidbits because it surely will get a little, interesting a little later on. So go ahead to your next
Yeah,
question.
the
Unless,
Peruvian nation is very interesting. I know it's a big part of what you do, but I will continue on. The next question is outside the ideology. By the way, I shared a lot of your own sentiments as in terms of talking about when you said that, honestly, I put it another way. I say the rules are bent to oppress the weak and the small, and then they're, broken to serve the rich. So you make your rules. What does it matter? You said something about that, right? The ideology. It's not so
mm-hmm,
important as how you apply it. Very true. So,
mm-hmm,
actually, we're going to take a step away from the ideology and maybe look at maybe there's someone who's been influential to your activism. Maybe, like, for myself, being American, I learned about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I don't really know any activists really from Asia, really, right?
yeah,
didn't
of
really
course.
learn it in school. It is what
Those
it
are my
is.
heroes. Those are
But,
my
but
heroes, all of them. The
yeah.
Nelson Mandelas, the Malcolm X's, the Martin Luther Kings, uh, anybody that you can possibly think of that had an impact in, and also created avenues and ways and means for us to have a bit of solace and escape the oppression that we were suffering um, during the dark ages,
Are there any of
right?
these thinkers that are particularly influential to yourself, though?
I mean, that's what I mean. See, I was born in 1966, and so I'm a product of the Black Power movement and what was going on there. So I was sort of like raised, into and with that, right? I learned how to march and all of these things, from the brothers and sisters many years ago. And so I learned and understood who our heroes were, although they tried to villainize them. The Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army were actually our heroes, the ones that stepped up and wouldn't allow something like uh, George Floyd or Eric Garner or things of that nature. These were individuals that stood up, and because of that, people see and understand what they actually were up against back then, because now they're facing it with all of the police brutalities and murders that are happening to innocent people, not criminals necessarily, right? People who are just driving down the street, but because they're black, they're being treated a certain way, or because they're Asian, they're being treated a certain way, or because they're Hispanic, they're being treated a certain way, or because they have um, issues concerning, well, they may not have the issues, but because other people have issues with their gender identifications and so forth, these things are happening to people, and that's not right. So, so all of them, Harriet Tubman, because I can't, I can't marginalize my history and only speak about a small portion like a Malcolm X and and so forth, because that's just too easy. But Harriet Tubman influenced me just as much. W.E.B. Du Bois or Du Bois uh, also influenced me. Frederick, Douglass influenced me. George Washington Carver influenced me. It's just so many people who I can just reach into and reach back to and say that I was influenced by that. So, and once you, as you know, you're an extremely intelligent man. I've listened to you and I've seen you and spoken to you directly. So, you know that the more that you educate yourself, the more that the more that that you need to know more, and that you don't know too much. And so reading, and excuse me, not only black people, I've been influenced by others. Uh, who's that? Lolita LeBron, right? a few, just people from all over. It doesn't matter what race or ethnicity. If the things that you had to say had something to do with being principled, ethical, uh, and teaching how to become more progressive, uh, I'm with it. And and I love it, and I love them, and I allowed them to influence me because I want good influences and powerful influences because you take on those things that you consume.
I understand. That's a flexible approach, and I like that. Yeah, to be able to handle a lot of
Absolutely.
different situations. All right. So the next question is going to be the first half of the interviews we get to know you as an activist. The second half we're going to ask more about like activism itself. So different people come to this interview series. There's over 100 interviews with all the same questions to all the people attending, and you can see how the people answer this question. But to help differentiate between the different activists, some people at different steps in the journey. What are you most proud of accomplishing as an activist? It could be a couple things, right? But what are your some the more, you know? I mean, I guess
Okay.
surviving was crazy, right? I know that's 30 years in the box is crazy, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, first of all, going through that situation, I'm telling you, like, it seems superficially, that everything is okay, because here I am, I'm, articulating my thoughts clearly and so forth. Um, but the reality is, as you've seen and known, that they've modified the law concerning allowing people to go to solitary confinement for long periods of time, right? And so, because they recognize it as being torture,
yeah.
right?
The United
Um,
Nations is also
that is
classifies as torture.
absolutely, absolutely right. Um, I believe that they make mention of those things in the Geneva Convention. I'm not absolutely certain, but I'm sure that it may have been mentioned. And so I've been to hell and back like 7 times. I went crazy a few times and came back and so forth. And you like I said, superficially it seems like everything is okay. But you go through these periods of anxiety and they affect you. And so I don't really want anyone else to have to suffer in the way that I've suffered. And we're going all the way back to the initial aspect of police contact in which I was arrested, you know, um, falsely for something that I didn't do. Not just, not, I'm not talking about what I ended up doing the 30 years for, right? That was one of them. But they had almost like washed me over with like countless amounts of cases. And in them trying to do that, they wanted to make something stick. And the big 30 was the one that stuck, right? Um, so I want to be able to rectify a lot of the broken doors and the broken pathways and the twisted pathways that you find in law and in the way that it's applied, to
By the way,
marginalized people.
which borough did this happen in?
And this happened in the corrupt Brooklyn DA's office at the time. This is certainly long before the gentleman, I have to call him a gentleman, Ken Thompson came in to the DA's office and did his cleanup, and he cleaned the DA's office up, fired people, and that were part of the corruption, and allowed countless amounts of men and women to leave and go home because of they found the oddities and the corruption inside their cases. But of course, that they say that he died, right? I believe they said it was a brain aneurysm or something like that, or cancer. I can't remember what, but it was posed that he didn't die naturally for sure. They didn't appreciate the fact that he was letting black people out of prison like that in those record numbers because it never happened before. It was almost like a watershed. Um, and so I want to go into the DA's office and find out if there's still if that particular department that he opened concerning the release of people with unlawful convictions is still active and to what degree, and then to point out many of the points of bamboozleism that goes on, which is it. I believe it starts with the grand jury.
Hey, quick question. Did you so have you been exonerated because you said you were wrongfully incarcerated, correct?
No,
No,
what
it sounds
happened
like no.
was
Okay, go ahead.
no, no. What actually occurred was, and now I'm, it's at the point where I have to pursue, lawyers and such, and I'm just kind of like, it's a conundrum. So you want to pick the right ones that will actually, they're not just looking for the money, but a little bit more than that. But so what happened was I was going to my fourth parole board. So I'd already, done my years, and I went to the board, and they hit me each time for nonsense. You know, I had everything that you're supposed to have in terms of education, you know, uh, behavior, and so forth and so on, programs, all but they still hit me for the nature of the crime, right? Um, and so there's no way to defend against the nature of the crime because that'll never change. Like if you kill someone, that's always going to be what you've done, and there's never a way for you to change that. So for them to hit you for the nature of the crime means that they're utilizing the parole board as a weapon. They're weaponizing the parole board to actually create life without parole for people, or to create a death sentence by continually hitting people um, over and over again. And many men, because of that, got sick and different things, because you're getting older, which is, the reason why part of the movement for criminal justice reform deals with the aging, parole bills, that we have out there and we're fighting for. And so yeah, there's just so many different things, as you know, like this. The corruption is deep and wide, and high. It doesn't. It's not just the little guy on the bottom, as you saw from the Robert Brooks tape. It wasn't just the correction officers, the COs. You actually had the officers in authority that had white shirts on that signifies that they're sergeants and better. You know, and so not only that, as you can tell, you see the civilians also being inclusive and complicit with that. The nurses and such. You know, now, I there's just so much that needs to be pointed out, and there are now many of us who are home that are actually
Can I
able
can I ask something real
to
quick?
do that.
Okay,
Yes, you
so
may.
another thing is that before they, a lot of times people have struggled a lot of times before they get out, right? Especially if they're wrongfully convicted,
Yeah,
they ask you to sign a what is it,
yeah.
something, a confession, right, to the crime before they let you go, correct?
No, 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 no,
I
no.
won't be mad if you
If they,
signed it. I get it, but
if,
did you? Yeah.
no, no, no,
Okay.
no. Um, no. The thing is, in order. Oh, you talking about from the parole board to get out? You mean,
Yeah,
or
because they
you
want to
talking
have
about?
you under control. So the thing is that a lot, most, like I know people that like that were wrongfully incarcerated and they refused to
Oh,
confess to the
you
crime
talking about when? Okay, you
and they were
talking
put
about
back
when?
in. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know. I
that's okay
haven't
then. Yeah.
run into anybody. No, I haven't run into anyone that uh they sent them back in
So
because they didn't sign the paper.
so
But
you said
I have heard
okay.
about that. I've heard what they call, it's almost like a non-disclosure agreement where
Yeah.
you're not supposed to actually even speak about it afterward, except to say that you want to be with your family and so forth. The stock phrases.
So you said yeah. So
I
you
do
said four
believe that's the case.
times you were there, and then they said that they wouldn't let you out because of the nature of the crime. And
Yeah,
then
three
did they
times,
let you? Did they
and then
let
the
you out on
fourth one,
the fourth one? They let you out.
because
Right.
now this is the point. So I had a really wonderful lawyer who uh, pro bonoed my parole case and decided to assist me. A young lady by the name of Monica Mercola, uh, and so I told her that they were utilizing cases that were dismissed in the parole board, and it shouldn't have been even on the record. It's something that actually should have been expunged. But meanwhile, they were actually using these dismissed cases um, to hit me at the parole board. They utilized those cases, and they actually quoted it inside their decisions. And so that was something that I was fighting. Um, Initially, she didn't believe it. And she was like, well, I mean, that's not, that's not legal. And I was like, yeah, well, they do a lot of illegal things. And this is one of them. And she was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, of course I'm sure. She said, you know what? I'm just going to go down to the Brooklyn court, Supreme Court, and pull up the records for the case and see what's going on. So she goes down there and she finds out that the case is dismissed, as I told her, and she brings back the disposition of dismissal. And the disposition of dismissal reads that the case was dismissed, all cases related to it was dismissed, and and so forth, and all of that. Now, the thing is, this is the horrific thing. We learned about that January of 23. And that's the date that she went down there and got it. And so when she sent it to me, I said, Monica, did you read this? And she's like, yeah, I see it. They did dismiss. I was like, no, did you actually read the wording on it? And she was like, yeah, well, I was like, well, did you see the date? And then she saw the date, which was the 26th of in 96, in 1996, something like that. And I said, do you realize that when this got dismissed and all these cases were dismissed, that and it said that the judge, I mean, that the court released jurisdiction over me, that meant that I was supposed to be released, and she was stuck. She was shocked. She was like, oh, hold on, let me read this. And she went back and she was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And so what actually occurred was when they dismissed those cases, the case that I initially got arrested for, the bamboozle case that never actually happened, that I never did, some purse snatching that they tried to put on me and all that, which eventually, of course, was dismissed, right? But they used that case to hold me so that they can put other cases on, and so when she found that out, and she was like, oh, this is crazy. And so now she started writing to the parole division, and also to the prison. Like, my client is not supposed to even be in there. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, something has to be done. And definitely when he goes to the parole board, so, and so that's what happened. They saw that there was information that was now coming to light, and that, we were threatening to splash it, and throw it out there, social media, news outlets, and so forth. And I can't say for sure that that's exactly why they let me go, but, they finally let me go. But 26 years or 27 years after, they were supposed to let me go, when those cases got dismissed. That deals with what you call the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, but they ignored that and just left me in there an additional 27 years, never notified me that the cases were dismissed, or I can't say that they didn't notify Department of Corrections, but they certainly didn't let me know. You know what I'm saying? And so I did an additional 27 years.
Wow, man, that's crazy. All right. So let's get back to the activism stuff. I know since you've been out, you've actually testified for the city hall. You've been multiple times to Albany. You were just talking earlier about you knew about some events going on in Syracuse. You're working with Vocal New York, a very well-known and very highly respected, activist organization here in New York.
Yeah.
So, what in your experience as an activist, what are some of the most effective things that you think activists can do?
Well, obviously, making a lot of noise, bringing attention to issues is really how things get to rolling, especially if you're making the people in the positions of the legislature uncomfortable. And so anything dealing with unified bodies of people can affect and have an effect on anything, any system, any operation, any organization, any corporation. And so that is extremely important. But what's even more important than the gathering of people is that there be some sort of systematic plan, a campaign that's actually put together uh, in such a way that it does what it is that it was made to do. And so you really can't be effective if you're not planning and you don't have a full campaign about the issues that you're pushing.
I
So,
agree with that 100%, man. I'm serious. Like, there's a lot of groups out there, and making noise is important, like you said, but that's all they do. And if you just make a lot of noise, then you go home, the movement dies there that day. You need to make sure that the results happen. You are there for a reason. You're not there just to make noise. You're there to make the change happen. So,
I mean, well,
yeah, you gotta see you gotta see it through all the way.
well,
Don't
I
give
mean,
up.
the thing
Yeah.
is, see, what's happening is this: most people and organizations and groups that are out there, doing their activism, they're using the old models. They're still using the models from the '60s and '70s. Many of the data that they're using is almost like, verbatim from back then in those times. A lot of slogans that are being used are the same things that you've heard, back then in those times. And they're doing that because that is the model that has been given them some attention, for some issues. But there has to be a new model and new data that is being used because many of the things that we're facing today, we faced back then, but it's a different face. There's a different confrontation going on there. Many more different things. Like for instance, at the forefront of the Korean movement, right? Or a Korean voice that is speaking about how your nation is marginalized, in different places, certainly in the United States. Um, and so, you know, today we can get together along with some white people who feel like this is outrageous because they've grown up with us. It's a whole new world. It's a hip hop era in which everyone loved the music and goes to the same clubs and so forth and smokes a little bud. It's legal now in New York, so certainly. But you know, so it's a different way to approach it, and it hasn't been utilized yet. And I hope to bring light to some of the ways that we can shift, the way that we approach things, and also create a new perspective for people. I don't know. I've been to so I'm in John Jay College right now, and I also was in John Jay on the inside. They have a prison to college pipeline in Otisville Correctional Facility, and they do that with John Jay. So there are some things, that are, effective and effectively progressive inside the prisons. But um, I utilize that uh, the John Jay situation because there, as we know, most of the people who are effective are usually from the universities and colleges in terms of activism. You get the most, what I mean? Your activists come from, the Panthers. That's what they were. Most of them were, college students and, street men and women, Um, and so I want to show them a different way. And I have a different way. And so I'm going to let you continue with your line of questioning, and we'll get back to that, at a later time. But I certainly do have an answer.
Yeah, we'll return to this stuff at the end of the interview. I'll just keep to the questions as they are in the sequence, and
Mm-hmm.
then at the end we'll talk about some specifics, including Robert Brooks' activism, some
Mm-hmm.
stuff you talked about the colleges. We got some stuff coming up with them. Very interesting. I'm actually have a lot of critiques myself, but once again, it's not about what I'm thinking here. This is the interview to learn about your activism, right? We're gonna be
Well, you
no,
know what? Let me
yeah.
say one thing about that. I'm sorry. Let me just say one thing about that.
Go ahead.
Uh,
We'll get to it later though.
Okay, all right.
But
Go ahead, go
I
ahead.
mean, no, that's serious. Like this is, you know, what I mean, that's why I keep them to the questions. So,
No
but
question. Go
it's,
ahead.
it's going to be a great conversation. Let's move on. So the next one is, so the thing is that sometimes people they come to this channel. A lot of people come because I feel like a lot of people are activists because they are forced to be activists. No one's listening to them. No one's really acknowledging their problems. They got to find a way to get this stuff addressed. So these people may join organizations, and sometimes these organizations, they may feel like these organizations aren't really necessarily helping with what they want. But then you've also had leadership position organizations yourself, I believe. You seem like a leadership type of guy. You seem like sometimes you'll have, you know, if not necessarily with a title, then through your actions. So as you
Hmm.
know, sometimes people come to the organization and they want the organization to do something completely different from the mission statement of the organization, right? And you have to like, uh, you can accommodate them, but only so far, right? So, what do you think are the best practices for organizations to make sure that they're taking care of their members, but also staying true to their vision?
Wow, that's a great question, my man.
Yeah.
Well, considering organizations, when they form initially, they have what's known as a charter. And so they have to write out what their organization is about. Uh, and once they do that and they become incorporated, now they have to stay within the parameters of the charter that they drew up for themselves, right? And to be honest, like, when I came home, I had every intention of kind of like going hard against many of these organizations that supposedly are supporting criminal justice reform and prisoners, because I know from being on the inside for 30 years that many of these organizations are out here siphoning monies, and none of those dollars are reaching to the inside, period. You know, what's happening is that many of the organizations that are proposing to be, pro criminal justice reform, um, what they'll do is they'll write letters to certain people in prison. They'll write letters. And in the letters, they'll say what they will do for someone and so on. And, when you're dealing with a desperate man who already has 15 years in prison and is looking for a way out and no one is trying to give him, and then anybody, it could have been a little old lady from the corner that wrote a letter and said all of the things that many of these organizations said that they will do for them. And believe me, that person will be so grateful and reach out and write letters back, actually thanking them for something that they never did yet, right? And then these organizations take these letters that they receive from these prisoners talking about what they would do for them, and the prisoners are writing them back as if they've already done it, and so they can take those letters and utilize that to receive more funding. you know you can go to a board meeting, and say, listen, I have letters right here, you all have copies of it right before you, of prisoners that we've helped out and so forth and so on, and you haven't done a thing yet, you just sent them a couple of letters, but meanwhile you're about to receive 15, 20 million, for the next 5 years, because of this game that they call piggyback on the prisoner. And so it's a sad affair. And so I had every intentions of coming out and exposing some of them. But that can still be done. But I believe that the work that I'm doing is more important, than just trying to address a few people trying to get some dollars, right, out of the state, right? Um, and besides, why are you laughing?
Because that's exactly what's about to happen when we talk about this Robert Brooks situation. That's exactly what I'm about to do. You're about to
Yeah,
see
bro.
it. That's exactly what I'm about to do. Yeah,
All right. No, that's
that's
good. That's
exactly
good.
what I'm
Listen,
about to do.
I
That's
have
exact.
no, listen, believe me, I have no sympathy for anybody who utilizes, the atrocities and the pain, believe me, bro,
Look,
I
I'm not here to
really,
point fingers, but I am going to point to like what I think is the solution, and ask
hmm
like what you think about it. I think it really makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
So let's get we'll come back to that later. Yeah, but this
All
is
right, guys.
definitely
You got?
in the
Are you
plans.
earmarking these things? Because there's a lot that we got to remember to come back to. Are you? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'm remembering. We're almost done though. Yeah, they were almost done with the
All right,
regular
guys.
interview. Okay, so the next question is going to be we're almost done, right? Yeah, just I think three more questions, and this then we're done. Then we can have our own little freestyle.
We can
So
coast.
the thing is that when you first started activism, right? You may have been you were brought up in activism, like you said, right? Quite a storied beginning, right? You went through the whole entire Black Power movement. That was amazing as a child.
Hmm.
There was a time when you probably first became aware that things were unequal, or you were going to these events and you're asking, "What is this about?" Actually at a young age myself, when I think it was maybe around 11, right? I think the Olympics was going on, and there was signs "Yankee Go Home." I said, "What's that?" And that was kind of like a political awakening for me, right? So, from the time when you first kind of had your political awakening till now, right? You went through a lot of experiences that people will never in this life ever see. Like you definitely went all the way there. If you could look back and tell yourself something like when you were first starting activism, right? How has your perspective shifted, or what would you tell yourself, way back when you first became an activist? Like now, knowing what
Well,
you know now.
honestly, I would have told myself to read and learn about Plato's allegory of the cave. I'm not sure if anyone out there is familiar, but I'll just tell you quickly. The allegory of the cave is a story about some men and women, who were inside of a cave in a mountain. Uh, and I'm paraphrasing here, so they'd never seen any of the outside world before. They were chained and locked to the walls, of the cave, and the only thing that they were able to see was the sheet that was thrown over the mouth of the cave that they were in. Uh, and so they saw these shadows jumping around all over the sheet that was in front of them. And so, of course, the nature of man is that you have to identify things that you see. And so they began to create the fact that these shadows could be gods and angels and so forth and so on. Okay, so one of them was taken from the cave and beyond the veil. And so he was able to see, once he went past the sheet that was over the mouth of the cave, that there was a fire on the other side. Now, none of them had ever seen a fire directly before, ever. But so for the first time, he saw that this was a fire, and this is what was making the shadows jump on the sheets. And so they led him out of the bottom of the cave and the mountain. And so for the first time, when he came out of the mountain, he was able to see what everyone else saw: birds and trees and other people moving and clothing and all sorts of things, right? And so obviously his perspective, his perception changes and it broadens, and he sees things completely different. His reality is shifted, right? And so they snatched him up and brought him back to the cave and put him right back where he was with the rest of the people. So his dilemma was in the fact that when he got there, he was like, listen, those shadows, that's what they are. They're shadows. They're not gods and angels, but those shadows are actually made from the fire that's on the other side of the thing. And he started trying to tell him about what was going on in the greater world outside, and there are birds and trees and so forth. And they said to him, them people done brainwashed you when they took you up there. What you talking about? You know those are gods and so forth and so on. And so his dilemma, which is our dilemma, which is my dilemma, after you become educated and you understand and see things and your perspective changes and it broadens, how do you take that and make it so that the people who'd never seen anything and was never shown how to broaden their perspective to be able to see what it is that you see, so that they can now come out of that state that they're in regards to their reality being so narrow? That is what I would tell myself: to read, the allegory of the cave, so that I would have been able to contemplate and process that information and broaden my perspective and my consciousness earlier.
Interesting. All right. So, um, how can people follow your work? You have like maybe a website or social media, or how can people look you up?
Well, I'm on TikTok. And
Okay.
I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, but I haven't really been doing anything with those. I've taken a hiatus for a period of time because when I came home, I told myself that of course I was going to be active, but I wanted to give myself, an opportunity to reacclimate myself to being free. And so I said to myself that I would go 14 months, and then after the 14 months I will become active. You know, and so I was doing little things on my on the TikTok and so forth, but I really haven't done too much on Facebook or Instagram, but I'm there. But on TikTok you certainly will be able to see a lot of my content, which is based around the language that I created while I was there. I'm sure you already expressed your interest when we were on the bus concerning that, so we'll get to that in a little while. But anyway, there you
Okay.
go.
And the last question is: now that people have your TikTok, they can follow you on Instagram or those other possible stuff. What you got?
Oh,
Anything
that's
cool?
Kezilar 49.
Okay. What's that?
Kezilar 49 on TikTok.
Okay.
Kezilar for people who don't Kezilar. That's how it's.
Okay. And you got anything you got planned coming up for the future?
Oh yeah, 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 of course. Um, my goal is harmonious existence, brother. Like, and I really don't mean in a superficial manner. So, um, so I guess we can take this question and then kind of like segue into additional conversation from here, right? We
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So, so the language that God allowed me to create and use me as a vessel to bring to the world is really really a beautiful thing. Number one, we're not talking about some mediocre slang, compilation, or some ebonics or anything like that. We're talking about a full-fledged language. And when I did this, I did it again like for my people, right? And those of us who for the past 500 years we haven't had an ability to speak our own language. We were, on pain of death, we weren't allowed to speak, any of the African languages, during the slave period, right? And so, even though many people don't speak about it, that is certainly a point of contention for many of us. That's like a Grand Canyon, a hole in our soul that, we really don't speak too much about. But when I did it, I understood that this, could serve, the purpose of filling that hole for tens and tens of millions of people all over the world. Because along with the language, though, I knew that language acts as a glue for a nation of people, right? And so, in order for this language to be the glue for a nation of people, there had to be a nation in the first place, right? And so we couldn't go around just saying black people and so forth, because that's not a nation. That's not a national identity. It's a description. Um, and so I realized that in order for this to work, I would also have to create a national identity, for so that we're no longer called Negroes and colored folk and Afro this and African this and American that and so on. And so now we are who you call Karubia, which means the global nation in its modern definition, and in the ancient prophetic definition of it, it means the scattered ones or the dispersed ones, right? Um, and there's so much more, So, but go ahead.
Okay, now that makes sense. All right, thank you so much for that. That's actually concludes the online activist interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now we're going to go on to some other topics, and often at the end of these, this is going to be quite interesting. So, I like to get things done. I'm very results oriented. and we actually got together in the Robert Brooks situation. We'll be talking about your wrongfully incarcerated stuff because I actually do quite a bit of work in that realm as well. But
Yeah.
let's talk about since we met on the Robert Brooks situation. Let's see if we can make some progress on this. So let me share my screen with you. Give me a second on that. Okay. All right. Do you see right here this screen that I'm sharing with you right now?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see that here. There's three bills here, right? There's going to be one bill allows the commissioner, as you could see, right? Yeah, the boss to actually discipline, right? So the thing is that the commissioner is giving the boss more power, right?
Yeah.
But what they don't give is actual people who are being served by the system or victimized by the system a voice. So the thing is that, right, I actually texted someone earlier today. I was like, they need to have like, I'm not saying that the commissioner can't be a part of the process, but people who are actually in the prison need to actually be part of the process as in terms of reviewing what's going on here. If you just give the boss more authority, he's just going to cover it up the next time, the first opportunity. The second bill will
Well,
be. Go ahead. Yeah.
hold on. Before you go on to that, let me address that first.
Yeah.
I would have to respectfully like disagree a bit,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because the thing is, the commissioner doesn't know what's going on inside the prison, so he's not making any arbitrary decisions because he's trying to cover, that particular thing up. More than likely, he doesn't even know it's happening because the superintendent of the prison, who is like the commissioner but inside the prison, he's not letting him know of certain things because doesn't want to seem, or she doesn't want to seem as if she's not running
Okay.
her prison, or he's not running his prison correctly. That's like, who wants their boss to know that they're incompetent, right? And so also what happens is this, and this occurs with many of the civilians that are inside the prison system right now, and also the investigators that supposedly are investigating um, the bad actors and the bad behaviors by many of the officers and so forth, the staff, right? Um, they, after a while, they're working there for years, right? And they're coming back and forth to these prisons, so forth, and they develop friendships with these officers. They develop friendships with them. The civilians that work there, they work there with them every day, and so they go to lunch with them. They start going to functions together. They meet their children and their kids. And how in the world is he going to destroy this guy or this woman's career when his wife is best friends with the other guy's wife, right? The correction officer's wife, and things like that. And so close proximity doesn't necessarily mean that that's a plus, because sometimes close proximity means that they become so close to them that they really don't perform their job function
That is
because they're
true.
covering up for their friend, you see?
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean why I push back just a little bit to
I
show.
wouldn't.
That's what I
I
mean
wouldn't
by
have
those
just
little
one
things
person.
have to be shown to
I
people.
would have
Yeah.
a group of prisoners, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, because you're exactly right. If it's only one prisoner who has access to the commissioner to report misdeeds, is the commissioner only talking to the management and the warden and the security guards, or is he also talking to the prisoners as well? Right? The prisoners have to have their own voice, and it shouldn't be just one prisoner. You're exactly right. Things are going to get twisted up, right? It should be different prisoners, right? A group
Well,
of prisoners. Go ahead.
um, well, all right. So that's the thing. When you see them go on TV and they talking about they're not uh, directly dealing with the prisoners, that necessarily are affected necessarily. Um, because
The
when they come through
commissioner,
the
right?
prison, yeah, the commissioners and outside, when they come through, they're led,
Yeah, so
to
the commissioner
certain
doesn't know what's
places.
going on, so he can't fix it. So what's the use of giving the commissioner more power? Once again, they're just giving the power to the top guy, who doesn't really talk to the people who's actually directly affected, and the people who's directly affected have no pathway to actually be really heard.
I mean, the reason that they can't, well,
Yeah.
see, look, those are two separate issues.
Okay.
Those of us that were incarcerated being heard, and then officers being disciplined for bad behaviors, right? Those are
Okay.
two separate things. the thing about the officers being disciplined is not that the commissioner can't do. What happens is their union is so strong that
Yeah.
it's almost like they have to do what they did to Robert Brooks pretty much to get fired almost, right? Like it look, it's they didn't charge these men and women uh since that occurred. And this is a death. They beat him to death and choked him to death. The whole world saw it, right? And having seen that, and they're still not. What do you think would happen for someone that just got beat down with sticks? But he didn't die, but they just broke him up, broke his bones and his hips. We've seen many men who are now mishappen. Their body structure is destroyed because they got arms broken, shoulder blades broken, their hips broken, legs broken, you know, their nuts kicked into their stomach, and they have problems from then on, for the rest of their lives concerning that. But because those are not deaths that are happening, they're not addressing it. And so what actually has to happen is there has to be some way for people who are formerly incarcerated, or maybe people from certain community hubs, that has to be a part of the commissioner's office and given the power to actually go into the prisons and speak, to the prisoners without the presence of officers and so forth and so on. You know what I mean? Because even when they do go in and they do talk to the prisoners are so afraid because they know when they leave, right? They acting nice now, but as soon as they leave, somebody's getting beat down. A few somebodies are going to get beat down, and a possible another Robert Brooks could happen. Everyone knows that. And so, no one wants to be the brave one to actually step up. There are few like myself. That's why I ended up doing 15 years in the box. And many others who like I said, many others who you now see. You got Stanley Bellamy and quite a few individuals, who were brave, and we stepped up and we were in the back rooms, classrooms and so forth, creating the designs for how we were going to approach these circumstances when we were released. And now we are. Believe me, there are many, many of us now. And I'm saying the men who had the minds, right? Who have the ability to articulate the data that we have compiled concerning what's been done. And, we out here to do it now. So I'm kind of excited for what we have in the future. And I don't want it to be, the usual. It's not going to be, not with me. It's not going to be that way.
Exactly. That's another thing. The thing is that someone like yourself who's suffered, right, as from the system, you won't allow half measures to be taken. You won't allow people to be other people, right, that have not been victims. When they see victimization going on, like you said before, right? Yeah, their wife's friends with their wife, so they kind of look the other way, right? It's not really personal for them. Where there's no pain, there's no urgency, right? So the fact of the matter is that they are just not feeling it the same as someone like yourself who's been through it. So that's why you'll see like someone like yourself is never given access to actually impact these types of what's going on here. It's going to be, once again, this commissioner. It's going to be, right, this person who's this ombudsman. How is the second one? The second bill talks about the appointment of an ombudsman, right? But this ombudsman is accountable to the governor and the legislature. Doesn't really appoint once. You look at the civilian review board of the police officers in New York City, right? It's all political appointees. Once again, this ombudsman doesn't really speak to voters, doesn't speak to the public. He speaks directly to the governor, and he's appointed by the governor. So, what really good is it? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's another commissioner. Basically, they just created another commissioner spot, but inside the directly inside the governor's office, right?
I feel like the last one is the worst one, right? Yeah. The third one is, it says, we'll finally give the nonprofit currently monitoring our prisons the Correctional Association of New York, the tools it needs to do its job. Unannounced. Okay, let's look at this Correctional Association of New York. Let me bring that up for a second, okay? Give me a second.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay, this is actually the organization called. Let me see if it's popping up right now. Okay, this is Correctional Organization of New York, CANY. Okay, this
yeah.
is
Correctional
their
Association.
executive director. This is the director. This is the senior analyst. This is the senior associate. This is right now. Maybe one of them was in jail, maybe not. I don't think any of them have been in jail. They're all Ivy Leagues.
I think.
We,
Hold on. Go back. Go
yeah,
back to
yeah.
the guy. No, that
This
guy,
guy, you know this guy,
the one you just passed. Go back. Go back. No, no, no. The other way. I'm sorry.
the colored guy.
This guy. Yeah, yeah. This guy.
What about this guy?
What's his name?
Toindranath T. Ramdeo. He's an
Mm,
associate. I'm gonna look him up right now. He's the monitoring reporting team. Oversees the intake process. He worked for Queens Hospital as a health worker
mm-hmm.
to identify barriers to health goals. He earned a BA from Bard College, and he did a case study on Guyana to understand the cause of ethnic politics conflicts in the world. He completed his master's degree in leadership and urban ministry from the New York Theological Seminary.
Was he ever incarcerated? He looks familiar.
It doesn't look. It doesn't say so. Maybe he was, but it doesn't say so. His background
Okay.
doesn't suggest so.
Mm, okay.
So when I take a look at this guy's right bio, sorry that didn't actually share, right? But I was just reading that off the pop up that happened. But you could see
Mm-hmm.
once again, right? We know that the criminal justice system incarcerates black people at the rate of 5 times the rate of white people,
Mm-hmm.
and often not really talked about is the rate of incarceration of Pacific Islanders, which is
Mm-hmm.
actually often underreported, right? Because of they manipulate the numbers and all this other thing. These
Absolutely.
people are getting six-figure salaries. A very similar thing happens at Fortune Society, right? You have these people here that are taking care of. I'm not saying that these middle-class people with Ivy League degrees can't be a part of the solution, but they don't get to replace people like yourself that have actually been through the process. It's okay for
Mm-hmm.
them to, right, be a part of these organizations, but when they're always a leadership and they occupy every paid position,
Right.
some,
Well, let me
yeah.
say this to you so that you can get a
Oh,
small piece
one
of.
last thing.
Well,
They've
first
been around since like the 1800s, and they've already right haven't really made. You already know this stuff is going on. If I go to their main page, they've been around since 1844. They haven't been that effective. So, what?
well,
Okay,
Congressional
go ahead.
Association in New York, they come through.
Not
They're
saying they're
not.
all bad. Yeah, go ahead.
They're not. They're just. They monitor the correction institutions and so forth. They don't really do anything, you know, in terms of activism as far as protesting and things like that. But I'm the thing is, I'm not really looking for them to do anything. I'm really excited now that I'm home and many of my comrades are now home. And we're going to show them how it's done. See, now the thing is this: when I was incarcerated, brother,
Yeah.
many many of the people who the organizations that you're talking about, many of these organizations were actually created by prisoners, or the template for the organizations were created by people who were incarcerated. We were in our back rooms and we were planning, and Exodus and all these other groups, you know, Phoenix House back in the days when it was created, like, as a drug, house and a means for people to come home from prison and so forth. And so when we were planning a lot of these things, and I have to give the props to people who deserve it, such as Mr. Larry Lukeman White. He was one of the greatest minds ever. He showed us how to take information, create charts and graphs, and actually articulate the information from that, so that we can be effective in terms of getting our points across to administrative bodies, and also explaining what was actually happening to uh, the marginalized population. And then we also have the gentleman Eddie Ellis, great man. He was also instrumental in creating um, the Resurrection Study Group that was on the inside. That was many of us on the inside who took what we call the African Pledge, which was, to ensure that we would continue with the upliftment of our communities and so forth, and so there was a lot of backroom things, but the credit for a lot of these organizations being created was taken from us, as you were showing me, right? And these other people stepped in, and the next thing you know, the individuals like myself that come home and I'm looking for, a spot in an organization that I actually created in a back classroom somewhere. You know what I'm saying? You know, and then you can't really find. And then the people that are actually working there, or they have this sort of smug attitude, as if I should be appreciative of them. When in actuality, I'm really telling them like, yo, you got my spot. You really need to go, but. And you're
You know
not
what?
doing what it was we created these organizations for in the first place. So.
If you actually have read the or listened to the works of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they often talked about the struggle of people in Asia and how that
Hmm.
was very tied in with the civil rights movement. But
Hmm.
nowadays, the same exact thing is happening in the anti-war movement. By the way, right?
Hmm.
These same white bougie millionaires have pushed Asian Americans out of the way in the
Hmm.
and the same things also happen with people with disabilities, right? I also work with a
Hmm.
coalition.
Right.
Now the thing is that in my coalition, I do also work with the wrongfully incarcerated, and just so you know, the wrongfully incarcerated are actually some of my best partners. They've already fought the system. They're already very incentivized. They've been injured, so they work with a high amount of urgency. They work to get things done. I would say that public housing is one of the weakest partners, right? They have a easy place to stay. They're okay for tonight. They're not really looking for anything. It just shows. The people with disabilities are very excellent partners, right? They need to have their accessibility stuff, otherwise they're going to lose access to the world. It is something and people with disabilities are the second largest minority voting bloc in the nation, and this can be a very powerful ally. We've
Hold
also
on. Say that again. Who is the? Say that again.
the people with disabilities are the second largest minority voting bloc in the nation.
Wow,
Yeah, but
that
they
is incredible.
and
But
right.
they don't.
Well, the thing is that often, right, and I'm not anti-white here, but the white people don't want to tell you about the other minorities. They want to keep the blacks on their own plantation, separate from the other plantations, and
Hmm.
and I'm not. And often blacks choose to work with whites. I'm not saying they're wrong to do that because whites have more resources, they have more things to give you. So I understand that, but the fact of the matter is that you won't always have the same priorities positions as them. With the other minorities, you have other things that you have more in common with us. Don't forget to work with us because a lot of times, especially like this wrongful conviction stuff, they'll take over
Hmm.
your organizations, as you can see right there. This is the same
Hmm.
thing as going on in the anti-war movement. And you saw, I don't know if you went to the Robert Brooks town hall when I was talking about that,
Yeah, I
right?
saw you there. That's where I first saw you. Yeah.
Yeah, like this is happening to Asian Americans, but it's not talked about, and it's really frustrating. And
I listen. Let me
we
tell
need
you
more
this. I
solidarity.
love the fact that you did that. And I
Thank you.
thought that that was really brave of you. And you had an attitude about it, which I thought was pretty cool. Like you
It's
was like, what?
killing me.
Like recognize us as well. Like this is like something that needs to be, a drop. That's the reason why I immediately knew who you were. Remember we were on the bus
Oh
and I was
yeah,
like, yeah, you were the one
they
that.
blackballed me amongst my people. A lot of the
Mhm.
Asian American leaders right now, I'm sorry to say, is under Grace Meng, who's actually receives more than 30 times her largest individual contribution.
Mhm.
Her largest contributor, number one, is Israel IPAC, right? Is American Israel, and the thing is that the 2 through 20, right? Her contributors all combined don't add up to that $300,000 donation from IPAC. And what
Mhm.
she does is she has all the rest of the Asian American leaders running stuff for Israel and not actually work on Asian American issues in any real way. So they do a lot of fluff stuff, but it's really killing my people. But this is not being addressed. So
Mhm.
we'll see. But I do thank you for at least listening to that, right?
I mean, look, I no, I
Yeah.
know something about. First of all, I respect the Korean nation because of the fact that I happen to have there was a like this Korean show that used to come on, subtitled though, but it was about King Sejong, right? Who was
Okay.
the one who he was
Went to
the king
Hangul,
that actually created the
the
writing
alphabet.
system.
You're right.
Right, yeah, absolutely, for the Korean nation. And of course me creating a language, and also, I didn't tell you, the languages is not just phonetics. I've also created an entire writing system that is completely distinct from any other writing system, with distinct characters and so forth. And it's a full-fledged.
Can I
To be
actually
honest,
can I tell you something right quick about the Korean language right quick the alphabet. The thing is
absolutely.
that the Korean alphabet is actually diagrams of the shape of your mouth, your tooth, your tongue. Oh, you know about this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw the whole thing. I
And the
was
vowels and stuff is actually based off of right the energy.
That is so
So
fire.
yeah, it's very yeah. Okay, so you know about that. Interesting. Okay, good,
Yeah,
good.
absolutely. Listen,
Yeah.
that's what I'm telling you. That's I have an affinity for your nation. Look, there's a guy. Okay, so all right, now I'm gonna share some things with you. So when I was in Green Haven Correctional Facility, which is like maybe like a 2,000 and change, it's like 2,000 and change people. It was actually in Green Haven. Um, Now they've shut down a lot of Green Haven, and as far as population, and made it into transit, like the new transit. But when I was there and I bought the language there, brother, um, because of the way that the language sounded when I spoke it, many people thought that I was stealing from the Asian community. They thought that I was mixing Chinese with, Korean, or, Korean with Japanese or something, right? And so what I did was I bought a few of my students. I don't know if you know about Green Haven, but there in Green Haven, they had the largest Asian population, in the state of New York.
Oh
They're in
wow.
Clinton.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're in Clinton Correctional Facility. And so they have their own courts and so forth, and you just can't just come walk over there. You know, I'm an avid chess player, so the only way you could actually just go over there is if you're playing chess, and you have to bring a pack of cigarettes. That was money. And so the thing was, so my students said that, and I said, well, come on over here and let's go over there to the Asian, you know, um,
Okay.
courts, right? They call courts. So we go over to the Asian courts, and I wanted them to just listen so that they can hear the cadence of the languages, right? And then I spoke, our language, which is called Zekanai. Zekanai means seven, and that's significant because every single word and phrase in the language is spelled with seven letters. There's no such thing as a one-letter word, a five-letter word, anything like. Every single word and phrase is spelled with seven letters. Um, and so I went over there and we listened to them speak. And so the Chinese fellas, they had sort of like a choppy kind of manner of speaking, and it was like that, and comparisons were being made. But then they understood when I began to speak how completely uh, distinct and authentic this language was, and they were really impressed. And so having said that, when I did that over in that area, the Asian community was like, hold on, you did what, this is you did that? And I was like, yeah. So um now I taught classes from all the way up in Attica all the way down to Fishkill, right? Now, I taught classes, and you're only allowed to have like 21 people in your class. So the waiting list to get in my class was like 145 people or so, right? And many of them were from the Asian community. Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen. I actually had to go to bat and argue with one of my students, right? Who, and I understood, his sentiment. He's like, every time we let anybody in, with our stuff, they always take it and do why, And I was like, listen, you're being narrow-minded. I said, so what do you expect when I put the book out, which is called 777, The Birth of Our Tongue, which is teaching the language. Do you want us to have security at, Barnes and Noble? So anybody that's not black, if they try to get the book, we're going to pull guns out and say, don't buy the book or don't learn the language? Like, it's ridiculous. So, you can't stop people from wanting to learn a thing. But the only thing, what you can do is you can express to them the sanctity of it, how sacred this is especially after the absence of us not having a language for close to 500 years, you know. But so the point is, one of my favorite guys was Korean, and his name was La Peloute. La Peloute means sky. So Sky was my boy, and and so that's how it was. It was it was spreading like wildfire, and everyone was interested in, and so I created a really good tie with the Asian community. Just that's just a little story there.
Hey, I'm glad it worked out, man. That's good. Okay,
Mm.
better a good story than a
Mhm.
bad story, right? All right. All right. So let's move on to the other one. We were also talking about. I do actually work with wrongful convictions. So I've actually that's how I know Derek Hamilton. Actually, I looked him up recently. I didn't know that he got a big settlement. So I was like, I didn't even know that until recently. I knew that.
Yeah,
I've been working with Nolan Farrell and Reverend Keith Gadsden, not Reverend Kevin
yeah,
McCall. Do you know those two?
mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the thing is that their cases did not get picked up by Derek Hamilton, so I really wasn't you know I really didn't cross paths with them too much because we were kind of like on our own thing. But
Yeah.
I actually have some very cool. I did some U.S. presidential candidate debates, and in each one of them, except for one of them, right? I think we had four of them. Three of them,
He was mentioned.
I had someone wrongfully incarcerated be a moderator for each discussion panel. Actually, just so you know, right now, I think that on February 16th, at one of the dorms up at Columbia University, we're having a mayoral candidate forum to talk about students' issues, and it might be an interesting thing. If you would you like to be a moderator for one of our upcoming mayoral candidate debates or forums?
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
That's an honor to do that. Absolutely, of course I would.
we're gonna
I
do
mean,
that. Yeah,
I would have to see, and like the timing. You do know I'm in John Jay, so um, I have to work the schedule out. But I'm sure that even what, I might skip class regardless. It's
we've
just
done it. We've done it a bunch of times. Not only that, just so you know, like I've had actually like four U.S. presidential debates. I had the only third-party independent candidate debates in New York City in the 2021 election cycle, where we actually had I don't know if you're someone named Devon
I'm
Nash.
aware.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Oh okay. Cool. So we're doing this kind of stuff all the time. So don't worry
Hmm.
about it. We could always have another one come up. The primary isn't
Excellent.
until June. Just so you know
I'm in.
too. Yeah. Also, this right here is actually a list of all the voters in a certain area. Right. You could see that this is actually a list of all. You see, this is like an address list with all the
Hmm.
voters in a certain area.
Yeah, rep my block.
Yeah. So the thing is
Hmm.
that right now, we're actually trying to engineer a takeover of the political parties. The fact of the matter is that a lot of this is highly secretive. They don't really like to talk about it. But when the groups that control the ballot process and the machines, that's going to be the state, county, and the county committee of whatever party's in charge of that state. Not only that, but these groups also select the judges. So if you want criminal justice reform or ballot reform, right, then you need judges on your team. And
Hmm.
they don't really talk about this because actually the county committee is responsible for selecting the leadership of the Democrat Party. And the thing
Hmm.
is that the not for profit industrial complex, a lot of the people that are running these organizations, not saying they're all bad, like they don't they're just protecting themselves because someone else could come in who's a bad actor and come in and upset the balance. And what's really important is control for them, right? So I'm not saying they're bad to do this, but the fact of the matter is that what we need to do is see a lot of people who are wrongfully incarcerated, like yourself, run for office. And I'm not talking about city council because you're running against millionaires. Over half of all the seats in county committee are actually uncontested. You could walk right in. And if we take over enough seats in county committee, we can determine who the uh, political party leadership is, and we can select the judges, and that's going to really open things up towards a lot of contracts. Once again, that's why these people that you see in these organizations, they're not people like yourself. They're using you, exploiting you to make money for their
Absolutely.
six-figure jobs, while we're out here begging, starving on the streets, and this is ridiculous. I'm not.
Well, let
Yeah.
me say this first of all.
Go ahead.
My motivation can't be money. Is just we need that for sure. You know,
Yeah,
money is a protection. It is a tool uh, that is to be used, but it's not the primary factor, as
I
because
agree. You can't
you
buy
talk
loyalty, you
about.
can't buy integrity. But the fact of
Absolutely.
the
No,
matter
no,
is
no.
that
I'm not
yeah,
against anything you said there.
when they're
For sure. We
outgunning
need.
us by so
Yeah.
much, by millions of dollars to nothing, that's not
Well,
you can't win.
the
Or
thing
yeah,
is,
go ahead.
as you and I will have this discussion and continue on, you'll see that um, beyond just the language and and the advent of the identity of Carubia, there are many things that I've written down concerning what we call the seven links theory, which is basically a new economic model of markets and so forth. So, yeah, there's we're on a cusp of something really, really great. Now, along the lines of what you said earlier, as far as judges, I just had this discussion with someone, right? Not just judges. That is just the face of the discussion, right? Right now.
Yeah,
So
well,
judges,
that's
right?
important.
Of course, of course, of course. So, but beyond judges or any particular, what I did is I had a discussion with us, John Draper, from Vocal, New York,
Okay,
who extremely intelligent man. You have to, I spoke to him and he said that you contacted him for an interview. I believe he's going to after me, he's going to come forth and
awesome.
speak with you, right? Um, and so we were talking about how these approaches in terms of marching and screaming and so forth that it serves its purpose, but they need to learn how to navigate through the bureaucracy of these the halls of the legislature and other places, right? I'm explaining to them that they need to learn how to develop relations and social interaction, social engagement with not just the person that happens to be in office, but their clerical staff, because these are human beings. See, when we most of the time we're addressing the seat rather than trying to reach and access the people that are sitting in the seats and in these positions, right? And so I
Wait, can I
work.
I'm not
Yeah,
mad at
good.
that particular strategy, but okay, when you talk
No,
to
I'm
these
going to develop it though.
when you talk to
It's
people,
not just
you
there.
need to have leverage. You need to say, you know what, I will go out and talk to your voters. I know who they are. A rally, maybe 10% of the people vote. I have the list of exactly who votes in the last
Mhm.
election. I got my people running for county committee. They already got
Right.
50 signatures in their 2 block radius. They're definitely
Hmm.
doing the work. We're doing
Hmm.
candidate debates all over the place. We're linking together. We're contacting people from Pennsylvania. I had one of the longest wrongfully incarcerated men in U.S. history. I had the first wrongfully incarcerated, the first guy on death row, born by Jim McGreevy, whose mother's the first black detective in Philly, Pennsylvania history. His name's Ronald Long. He's working with me. We got a whole ill-ass team of wrongfully incarcerated people that you could team up with, and we're trying to also drive national
Connect
legislation
me.
as well too. So
Connect
Vincent
me with them.
Moto, yeah, we're gonna create our own little block of political activists. There's a guy named Andy Williams who's running for president. He was actually in Chicago. He's trying to help people who are formerly incarcerated to vote, to actually run for office. Right? We got to create our own little political action group to, you know, make sure that our issues are addressed. And I'll put you in team up with second largest minority voting group in the nation, right? The disabled. I'll hook you up with Asian Americans, right, that are hip to my message. And even though wrongful convictions is not a majority or on most people's minds, together as a bloc, as a coalition, we can work to further each other's interests.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Cool.
Let me just say this
I'm sorry.
first of
Go
all.
ahead.
What
Yeah.
you were saying is no, it's fine. The thing is, so we do want to get the judge, and what you're basically talking about is the strategy of what they call the velvet glove, with the steel hand, underneath it. Like, you're basically, I mean, the term is leverage, but you're basically threatening them that if they don't do what you tell them, that you're going to expose whatever or do whatever, right?
Primary
And
them.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's just the nature of it, right? But now, what I'm saying is we can do that too, But what happens if you do that and you show that threat, and then he tells you, this judge or whomever, or this politician says, okay, we're gonna do it, we're gonna take care of it and so forth, but meanwhile in the back room he's really, brushing you to the side, and he's going to do something else. Wouldn't it be so wonderful if we had developed relations with his staff to the point where his staff is letting us know, low, this guy's about to shaft y'all? You understand what I'm saying? So again, we can't, what we do is we diminish the value of people and not understand the value, of people who are in clerical positions. Let me explain the value of that. The value of that is the people who are the clerks in any place, any organization, they are the ones with all the goods and the information about everything, how everything runs. When the presidents, get when the presidents of whatever, CEOs or whomever, they come and go, the clerks are still there. It doesn't matter who comes and goes, the clerks are still, so they know where all the bodies are buried. They know where all the files are and so forth. And this is who really keeps, those organizations and institutions running. And so I believe that if we were to love bomb them, love bomb the staff, they're most of them are thankless workers. People don't really thank them for doing what they do. They run them raggedy,
Now,
and they sure would love.
if I could mention something too, yeah,
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
your
yeah.
strategy, but also I feel like that also underlines the fact that people like yourself should have your own staff, right? People that are wrongfully incarcerated, right? We can't just let all the bougie people that come in have the staff because we can see how valuable they are, right? Us
Yes, yeah.
people out here that's actually affected by this stuff, we got to have our own offices and have our own staff. And by not having staff and just relying on everything coming from ourselves, this is a huge burden upon us. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, 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 that's fine. But look, and that's true. We do need to have. I certainly need a staff, and I've been. Listen, I've been blessed to be in a company of some really wonderful people, right? Like Ted Funding, Ted Burrows, beautiful brother, loyal to, to a fault. Um, and then, but you have to, if you get a staff, you have to know how to treat them as well, right? Because we have, I'm
I've been a boss
engaged.
too. Oh my goodness, I know about that. Yeah.
My fiance, you saw her on the bus too. Her name is Elizabeth Mackey, and she is with the homeless union. She has have experienced homelessness, and the manner that people were being treated so inhumanely there, galvanized her to learn what all of the procedures and rules were for shelters and such. And she saw that they weren't doing anything, along the lines of procedure. So she started to galvanize, other people that were suffering that. And now she's making a really big impact. And she's,
They're trying
selflessly,
to evict me, right? This is my paperwork. They're trying to evict me right here.
they're trying to,
This is my notice right here.
well,
Trying
some
to evict
people you
me.
can talk to now,
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Now,
Oh
listen.
my god.
So, but the thing is, like I was saying, that you have to know how to treat them, because she was here when I was getting ready to start the interview with you.
Oh really?
And yeah, and then when she was trying to tell me something, I basically shooed her. Like, no, don't, and I lost my staff. Yeah, she left. She left me. She left.
Sorry, man. Sorry.
No, I love it though. Still, it's all right. But the thing is, yes, I've been trying to acquire a nucleus that would be strong enough, and they have to be strong. You have to be able to be courageous in the face of, all sorts of opposition, because the world is real, and I wouldn't want anyone to begin this fight not understanding just how rough these people can get. And so I'm so happy that you've offered to connect me to all of these different entities, and I would definitely hold you to that. I'm going to be all in in your box. You
No
know what I
problem, man.
mean?
I'm gonna send you the information maybe even tonight. Yeah, there's actually, I'll send you some of the videos you could watch and their direct information. Together we could
Mhm.
make the presidential debate. The presidential thing is over, but we're trying to leverage some of the stuff that's going on. But once again, right, it really comes on to you. You might see you do see that I have some connection in the Trump world, right?
Mhm.
But the thing is that honestly, I work with all the groups, but each group has factions, right? And
Mhm.
within, you heard about like them fighting about the H-1B visa and stuff. So the fact of the matter is that there is a group, there is a faction inside there is a possibility that someone like yourself can get your case relooked at if we make the case that, right, you're also, Trump was a victim of political blah blah blah, right?
Right.
And maybe you were also a victim of, right, an unfair criminal justice system. So we're
Right.
making that play, but
Well,
yeah,
the thing is,
faction's not
my
going great now. I'll tell you the truth, though. Go ahead. Yeah,
my dilemma is that, you know, um,
I'm making my play
I
though.
was
Go ahead.
targeted. I
Yeah.
was targeted because I was one of the few men who were unafraid, of police. Um, when I was 20 years old, I had a shootout with the cops in Brooklyn, this 71st precinct. This was a corrupt. These are, police that were actually killing people and forcing other individuals to sell drugs for them and things like that. Many of them got arrested years ago. Them in the 77 precinct. Um, many of the officers were arrested because of that. And this is what I was faced with. So they weren't too happy with the fact that I only received 8 years. So I did 8 years for, that before this 30. And so that was the primary reason why I was set up, in regards to this wrongful conviction for something that I never did. And, I actually, we have all the evidence in terms of me being at this Christian brunch at the time that this supposed purse snatching occurred, and, and the death of the person happened during that time. But it certainly wasn't me. And the thing is, I came home and I was able to dig and find, and I got the wanted poster that they had of another gentleman. I won't name him because I don't want to stigmatize this man. Um, and we don't know if he actually did it or not, or if they were, trying to, bamboozle another person. But they actually had the wanted poster out of the guy the very next day, and they were handing it out. And I actually have the police report as well, concerning that. And so they knew it wasn't me from the very beginning. They were just trying to get rid of someone that they thought shouldn't be free, and I ended up doing 30 years because of that sentiment. Yeah, um,
So are you trying to get those charges relooked at, or is that something that now that you're free?
absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I, no, I'm not trying to get the charges relooked at because the charges are dismissed, except for the unlawful conviction, of the 30-year sentence for the robbery murder,
Is Vocal
right?
helping you with this, or is Derek, or are you working with someone on this, or is it pretty much
Um,
you're on your own, or what's going on?
I mean, I haven't. I'm somewhat on my own. You know what I mean? I mean, I've been out there and I pretty much do the same thing that they do. Um, Not as good, I have to say. I'm pretty decent. So I will be certainly pursuing lawyers that will be interested in doing that. If you have some numbers, I'll take some from you, and I'll talk to them and see if, first of all, their philosophy, their ethics are, in line with mine. Many times we fail before we even start because we don't have the discussion, in which we gauge, an individual's thought process and their mindsets, and what their sense of right and wrong is, and what are their principles and so forth. And so after the engagement of the relationship, as time goes by and you start finding out that this person is not thinking along the lines of, you already stuck. And so I don't want to do that. And so I'm taking my time with it. But okay.
All right, cool. All right, sounds like a good place for us to start working together. So I definitely will check the station to for more future work. Is there anything else that you want to kind of talk about or mention in tonight's interview?
Yeah, let me just finish off with a little bit more about the language of Zekanai,
Okay.
because um, people certainly will be interested in that, I'm sure, and they would like to hear what the language sounds like. Um, and so I'll like give a little brief little description and say a couple of things, and then immediately translate into the English. But before I do that, I wanted to explain um, certain features of the language that makes it completely distinct from any other language, right? And so one of the features is the fact that, like I told you, every single word and phrase in the language is spelled with 7 letters. So that means that it's the most uniform, mathematically precise language on the planet, right? And then the greatest feature, or the primary feature, I believe, is the fact that there are no negative words in the language whatsoever. And I don't mean profanity only. I mean anything with negative connotations does not and cannot exist in the language, right? Um, but in order for a language to be full-fledged, you have to be able to express the negatives in some way, shape, or form, right? So that you can make a distinction between, let's say, good and bad, right? And so to reconcile that, I created a concept in the language called Zhuzian. And Zhuzian means the reverse or the opposite. And so how that works is, if you wanted to express the word bad, since the word doesn't exist in English, it doesn't exist, you would have to uh, say the word good, which in Zekanai is ikinawe, and then you would say ikinawe zuzien, which is saying the reverse or the opposite of this positively charged word, right? And so you will be able to express the negative, but you'll never be able to articulate a negative word in the language, right? And so I think that, that right there is something for sure. Women are going to love it, because you can't call them a bitch in this language for sure. Um, and now I'll just give you a small little piece. Um, Dunetio naushifa gralelegeri dunetio, right? This language sounds like this. And Smunima and Nemiofalandani Floega Dunetio Naushifa. And when I speak this language, Hukulam Seumalaga Kuachuega. Most people say that Matiam Grelegeri Manichel Namnahu Naushifa. That it sounds like an Asian language. Landome mixed Chichineo Manichel Chulona Naushifa Chifio, with an African language as well. Vicuña, what you think?
Um, Sounds interesting. It's quite a construction right there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I won't lie. It's been a really, really interesting journey since the
I do have a
creation
quick
of it.
question. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
thing is that you said like sometimes good and bad, right? Doesn't necessarily mean good and bad. It means something's more or lesser than, right?
Yes.
So
Hmm.
the thing is that you could have a negative reflected through the zero, right, where you have 5 or -5, or you
Hmm.
could have something like less than 5, where it's just 4 or 3,
Right.
right?
Well,
So
less
yeah,
less doesn't mean negative. It's just an indication that it's uh less than another number, but it doesn't make it bad or good. It's just,
okay,
that's a degree. That's a distinction of degree, you know. So there's that. But I understand where you're coming from with it.
yeah,
Look, people will find a way to be able to, if even if they were to, let's say, take the word good, right? Ikinawe.
yeah.
And then if they were to somehow put an inflection
How
on
would they
it
say
that
better?
changes. Hmm?
How would they say better?
Where am I down?
This is good, but this is better.
Yeah, where am I
Right.
down?
Okay.
Hmm.
Interesting. Interesting.
Where am I down is better.
And what's
Hmm.
these? What's is there a sometimes language has different interesting ways that the words are connected, right? They have like a
Hmm.
history together, or um, was there a reason why those syllables were chosen instead of another set? Maybe I don't know.
Well, all right. Well, first of all, like I said, it's a full-fledged language, so we have our own rules of grammar and so forth, right? Not only that, I said that it's also not just phonetics, but an entire writing system. And so,
Oh,
um,
cool.
yeah. And so we have our Zatizia or punctuation marks. We have Seseli or the math symbols and stuff like that, that you would have in other languages. We have the Lafidia, um, which is what you would call diphthongs, right? In of the language, which is when two vowels are together and the sound that it makes, which and so I wanted to make sure that I was able to cover all of the rules of grammar within the construction of the language, and beyond that, I had to utilize a bit of artistry to incorporate the um, the lurazwa, the style, or the noeaka, the swag of my people. So our not only is our character incorporated in that, but our personality as a nation of people is also incorporated in that, which is, I'm sure if there are people out there listening to your show, that are Caribbean, they will kind of like feel as if they kind of know it somehow and they don't understand why, because they know they don't know the language, but it's because that bounce, the way that we speak, is familiar to them because I incorporated our style of speaking and so forth, our hip hop rhythm within the language.
Cool. I'm down with it, man.
Hmm.
Sounds
Hmm.
pretty cool. All right, so
Yeah.
yeah, we'll probably have our own separate dive. Actually, you should have your own. You probably should make your own
Podcast.
series of videos about this particular idea. Yeah, it sounds
We
like
can do
it's
that.
a
I
nice
mean, look,
idea.
if you want to, if I mean, we
I'll do a
have
nice
that
visual
lined
on it.
up.
Yeah.
We have that lined up, and you certainly can be a part of that. I would love to have you involved in that in some way, shape, or form, so we can discuss that, at a later time. And
Cool.
look, I appreciate your thought process and your mind. I appreciate your straightforwardness, and I appreciate your zeal, in trying to get things done. That's what most people are not seeing in you. That's where the hate is coming from because a zealous person is someone that, you're not really trying to hit. That's Jesus knocking over the money changers tables and so forth, in the biblical times, right? And so that's what I see you. When I first saw you, I told my wife, my fiance, that we got to get with this guy because he's trying to do something but nobody's really trying to assist him. People may even be afraid to connect with you, thinking that there would be repercussions to involving themselves with you, but I think that there's a greater possibility, and I really want to reach into the Korean culture and find out if we have similarities and things that that we can agree on, as two separate nations of people, and then come to the table of humanity and try to get some things done. What you think about that?
Yeah, I think we could definitely do that.
Mm. Okay,
All right.
my man.
Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. So,
Yeah, brother.
all right, I'm gonna end the stream here. Give me a
Hmm.
second.